An act of kindness, a country opening its doors to refugees fleeing a war. It sounds so straightforward, right? But what happens when that welcome leads to an absolutely heartbreaking choice? Today, we're unpacking a story from Finland, where pets saved from a war zone are now, believe it or not, facing a new kind of threat.
Just listen to that. That's the voice of Olena Kostrova, a refugee from Ukraine. Her words just capture the complete shock and disbelief at the center of this whole story. We're talking about the pets people carried with them as they fled for their lives, only to face this, a new kind of threat in a country of refuge.
So the accusation that's been reported across multiple outlets is pretty stark. Veterinary services in Finland are allegedly euthanizing the beloved pets of Ukrainian refugees, sometimes without the owner's full consent. And on the surface, that sounds unbelievably cruel.
But is it just a story of cruelty? Or is there something much more complex at play here? That's the big question we're going to unpack in this explainer. We're going to look at the laws, the costs, and the public health concerns that are all colliding to create these tragic situations.
Okay, so to really get what's happening, we have to start with the people at the very heart of this story. These are the accounts that brought this whole issue into the spotlight in the first place.
So meet Olena Kostrova and her dog Buddy. They survived for a whole month in a basement during the bombing of Mariupol. When they finally escaped the city on foot, Olena took only her documents and her dog. For her, Buddy wasn't just a pet, he was family.
So when they got to Finland, Elena did what any of us would do. She took Buddy to a vet for a lump she'd found. The vet looked at the lump, saw he had some dental issues, and then, according to Elena, immediately suggested euthanasia as the only real option. To her, this was just unthinkable.
So why on earth would a vet jump to that conclusion? Well, this brings us to the first major piece of the puzzle in our investigation, Finland's very specific and very strict animal welfare laws.
And right here, we find a super crucial piece of the puzzle. See, in Finland, euthanasia isn't just an option. It's framed as a legal obligation. The whole law is designed with one single goal in mind, to prevent an animal from suffering, even if that means making the most difficult decision possible.
Okay, let's break this down. The Finnish Animal Welfare Act says, first, that all animals have value. Great. Second, a sick animal must be cared for. But here's the part that changes everything. If proper care isn't possible and the animal is suffering, the law says it must be euthanized. And get this, a veterinary authority can even override what the owner wants to enforce this. So for a Finnish vet, this isn't a suggestion, it's the law.
But hang on, why would care be not possible? Well, that leads us straight to the second huge factor in this story, the harsh economic reality for refugees.
So in Buddy's case, the dental treatment he needed was estimated to cost hundreds of euros. And that's a lot of money for any pet owner, let alone someone who just fled their home with nothing.
But for Elena, that cost was just impossible. As a refugee, her entire monthly income was only 300 euros. Suddenly, one dental procedure could eat up her entire budget for a month, maybe more. The gap between the care Buddy needed and what she could afford was just massive.
And this is exactly where the system breaks down. When a refugee can't pay for treatment, that Finnish legal framework kicks in. If the vet decides the animal is suffering without that treatment, they are legally obligated to recommend ending that suffering. The owner's financial situation puts them in a totally impossible bind.
But this story isn't just about laws and money. Nope, there's a third, really powerful factor at play, a deep-seated public health concern right inside Finland.
See, Finland is officially free from two very serious diseases that can pass from animals to humans, rabies and a nasty tapeworm called Echinococcus. Both of these are present in Ukraine, and this difference drives an incredibly strict approach to all incoming animals. It's all about protecting both the animal and human populations of Finland.
Because of this risk, every single pet coming from Ukraine has to follow a really rigid protocol. They've got to see a vet within 3 days for a microchip, shots, and medication. Then they have to go into a mandatory 30-day quarantine. This isn't optional, it's a state-level requirement to stop any potential disease from spreading.
So now we can start to see how all these different pieces, the personal tragedy, the super strict laws, the high costs, and the public health fears, they all come together to create a perfect storm. And right here, the conflict becomes crystal clear. You see, everyone involved has a goal that, on its own, makes perfect sense. The refugee, like Elena, just wants to protect the companion who survived a war with her. The veterinarian is legally and ethically bound to stop an animal from suffering, and the state is responsible for protecting its entire population from dangerous diseases. The tragedy happens when all these well-intentioned goals slam into each other.
So what at first looks like a simple story of cruelty is actually a really complex systems problem. It's a clash between a country with some of the world's highest standards for animal welfare and public health and the devastating reality of people fleeing a crisis with literally nothing but the clothes on their backs and the pets in their arms.
And this leaves us with a really difficult and vital question. When a society's deeply held values, to protect animals from suffering and citizens from disease, collide with the chaos and trauma of war, what is the truly humane choice?